And what's the YouTube? It's your boy McKenna, aka, look, we back here. I think this is part 6, I believe, right? Yeah, this is part 6. So let's get back into it.
And his reputation, even D-Rose's mugshot would eventually go viral. In September 2012, D-Rose would get arrested, causing some of the biggest savages in Chicago to call for his release. Chief Keef too would eventually tweet Free D-Rose, together with an Instagram photo, finally letting even his mainstream audience know exactly who he was talking about in his songs. Other youngsters would even tweet to Keef, telling him how they had seen D-Rose while they were in jail, and confirming that he was banging for 600 crazy whilst inside. While some people seemingly
Feel me? But look, the nigga get locked up in my coat, right? So man, this the picture. This I don't know. This was his first mugshot he ever had. You feel me? Now he gets locked up in my coat. I'm looking for the picture. This is his first mugshot ever.
To me, it really sounds like they respected D-Rose so much that you realize nobody really disses D-Rose in songs. Like you see that nobody really disses D-Rose in songs. Like I feel like he's probably respected, right? I think he was respected like that, even as I respect him. Like you don't really hear them really dissing him like that, even though most of them are not here no more or they're locked up. But man,
ever. This is Twitter right here. This is my coat. That got locked up in my coat. I was blue.
However, at this time, D-Rose was still a juvenile and therefore placed in a juvenile temporary detention center, or what's better known in Chicago as Audie Home, named after Arthur J. Audie, the superintendent of the first such center in Chicago. And as D-Rose was a juvenile, he also wouldn't have a public mugshot taken until he was finally transferred to the county jail in June 2013 after turning 17. This mugshot would immediately go viral as Chief Keef fans could finally put a face to the name of the infamous savage from the songs, immediately cementing D-Rose's status as Chicago's #1 celebrity savage. And this mugshot would become iconic and was used in the covers of various 600 mixtapes, as well as on custom Free D-Rose shirts which members would seemingly make and sell. But most famously, D-Rose's mugshot would eventually become the icon of the infamous subreddit Chiracology, where Chicago drill culture is discussed in depth on Reddit, ultimately cementing D-Rose as quite literally the poster boy for Chicago drill. Finally, in mid-January 2014, D-Rose would end up beating this case, getting back onto
the Chiracology, bro. I don't know how some of them know about who did it at this time. They're at this place at that time. I don't know how people know this. I don't know how. It's just weird how bro, we're in a time where the internet does the police job for them. That's why the police don't have to do nothing. Because the internet does the police job for them. The police have to do nothing. And you can literally see that. Police have to do nothing at all. It's crazy.
the streets of Chicago, and even his ops would immediately take notice of this. D-Rose was finally free, with all eyes on him and a whole world of opportunities in front of him. Perhaps had he taken rapping seriously, his life story could have taken a drastically different direction, but unfortunately, D-Rose was as gangster as it got, and rapping was secondary to his main career as a savage. And soon, he would return to the streets with his reputation as a shooter to live up to. And ultimately, it was only a matter of time before he'd find himself in trouble with the law, but before that could happen, numerous people would lose their lives to his hand. It would appear that D-Rose hit the streets running, ready to capitalize on his newfound fame, and soon after getting home, he could be seen hanging out with his famous rapper friends, including Chief Keef and Fredo Santana. He would also visit New York at least once with Fredo and his fellow 600 savages like Rondo No. 9, and he could even be seen hopping on the stage with mainstream rappers like A$AP Rocky whilst tagging along to shows with Fredo Santana. He would also make a few rare music video cameos, such as in the Rondo and C-Day music video for the classic drill anthem Bail Out, which was released about a week after D-Rose was released from jail, and in the music video for Fredo's song Always, featuring G Herbo and Capo from Glow Gang. Interestingly, D-Rose was also spending time at the studio, where he would now try his chops at rapping, seeing if he could parlay his reputation as a savage into rap stardom. He would begin to promote his debut mixtape The Return of D-Rose, and this time in the studio would result in several songs with numerous drill heavy hitters, such as the song Zico Pack with Rondo No. 9 from 600, Boss Top from O-Block, and Lil Herb aka G Herbo from No Limit. Zico Pack was a disrespectful diss towards the original 051 Young Money member who was murdered, as well as the song Long Nights with Juice the Savage, C-Day, Rondo No. 9 and Fredo Santana, along with production from the legendary DJ Ken, who produced a lot of the early songs for Chief Keef. It appeared that D-Rose's life was actually heading in the right direction, with signs that Fredo was even perhaps considering signing him to his SSR label that he had recently started. D-Rose would even do his first interview around this time, a very brief 46-second snippet where Rose was pretty much out of his mind.
Okay, man, it's D-Rose from 600, man. Follow me on Instagram. Speed Drive D-Rose. You know how I rock. You know, shout out all my blocks. Folks don't know how I'm rocking. I'm just, you know, trying to be real hard. It's real hard, man. A lot of we just gonna get up together, the whole squad, the whole game. You know, free all the gas, rest in peace all the gas.
But while D-Rose was clearly trying to use his street fame to build a following, and perhaps
I really feel like you cannot be in the streets and then also try to make it rap career, 'cause that's not gonna work, bro. That's not gonna work. You have to pick one. If you're a street dude, you're doing street stuff for your gang, and maybe for the rapper, you know what I'm saying, I'm just saying, rappers have hitters, so you do that, you get paid. Or you be a rapper, you know what I'm saying, you have the people do the hits for you, you know what I'm saying, they take the hit, you know what I'm saying, boom, like that. You pay them. That's how it works. You cannot do both. That shit does not work.
eventually a career in music and media, there were still signs that he hadn't left his old life in the streets alone, because the majority of his social media posts were still him hanging around in his old stomping grounds in the South Side, sliding in traffic with fellow members or from the sets that he was known to be close with. During one of these times he was out sliding, on the 11th of February 2014, Chicago police officers who were patrolling the West Inglewood neighborhood would notice a white Dodge Caravan that was double parked in a way that obstructed the street. The police decided to question the people in this vehicle, who would turn out to be D Rose, Rondo No. 9, and C-Day. The police would question the trio, taking their personal information.
See, if you had D Rose, Rondo No. 9, and C-Day, yeah, that's a real triple threat right there. That's a real triple threat right there, for real. This right here is you want, like, if there's like a 3v tournament in basketball, this is what you want right here. All shooters. No questions asked. All shooters. Crash outs. Pure crash outs.
As well as the information of the car, including the VIN number. Perhaps the Chicago police had an inkling that the occupants of this minivan were plotting to do much more than just double parking. And afterwards, the trio was seemingly allowed to continue on with their night. But the next day, however, things would get serious. On the 12th of February, a 14-year-old boy by the name of Venzel Richardson was out with his friends in the Woodlawn neighborhood. Venzel, also known as Big V, was a popular kid and well known within his area, and may have even had aspirations to make it in music, as can be seen in this 2012 music video that was made as part of a mentoring program for elementary students interested in the arts, where Venzel would rap about his neighborhood and his goals not to get sucked into the gang life.
Yes, it's why I'm Pete. My clique is unique. We stay on the mic. We never go to sleep.
Always on the grind, never waste time. We avoid crime, bad bustin' rhymes. My swag is to hustle, not to cause trouble. Whatever you do, I can do double. My block is shady, everywhere I go, but I stay above it. You already know. What?
However, Venzel had a close relationship with members of the gang Taekwon World, as can be seen from this old picture of Venzel together with prominent member TB. However, it seems that as Venzel got a little bit older, the peer pressure and allure of gang life that he grew up around would prove too much to resist, as can be seen from later photos where he's seen posing with other gang members throwing up gang signs, as well as from his own social media posts where he can be seen posing with guns and throwing up more gang signs.
They got him. You see, sometimes you really want to, do better, but sometimes if you grow up around that stuff and you see that, most likely you're going to get sucked into that stuff. Pause. No diddy. You know what I'm saying? You're really going to just be, environment to your stuff, bro. That's pretty much what you're going to be, bro. And we can't change that because, our blacks, just a bunch of liquor stores, no money, and just the gang stuff, all the guns. I mean, that's what you gotta absorb, bro. That's how you had to survive in the hood. And that's what they want. That's what the government wants. They want us to kill each other. If we wake up and realize what they did to us, trust me.
Taunting the police and his ops, as well as claiming his set Taekwon World, as well as V Block for Vernon Street and Mo Block for his friend Mo from Taekwon World, who had been killed in January 2014. Taekwon World was ultimately one of the gangs considered to be opposition of 600 and O Block, making Venzel a target for numerous shooters affiliated with the BDs like D Rose. Around 3 PM, Venzel would make his last post on Facebook, once again taunting his ops while implying that him and his friends were outside. A few hours later, at approximately 8:20 PM, Venzel and his friends were walking along the 6100 block of South Vernon Avenue. They were on their way back home after visiting a convenience store when a white van pulled up alongside them, somebody opening a sliding back door and aiming a gun at them. These young men would begin running in different directions, but Venzel was shot several times, including in the head, and he would end up dying at the scene. Venzel's friend, prominent Taekwon World member TB, real name Terry Barry, would later tweet his pain at the loss, suggesting that Venzel was innocent and not involved in the gang war. Meanwhile, the day of the shooting, around 8 PM, and then again around 9:55 PM, D Rose would post on his Instagram 2 photos of himself with Lamron members OJ and Chubbs, implying that between 8 and 10 PM, D Rose was with them, or at least that's what he wanted people to think, with these pictures of him inside a house in.
Sorry, but if he's throwing up gang signs, I mean, what do you expect? You think people are innocent, but not everybody's innocent. Not everybody's innocent. You know what I'm saying? Everybody is not innocent, y'all. Everybody is not innocent. You can't just say, come on now, bro. RP him, but if he's on the gang signs and all that,
intended as a perfect alibi. However, about a week later on the 18th of February, D Rose would post an incredibly incriminating post, holding a Nerf gun with a caption saying, "Bullets fly, no Nerf." This was a lyric from the song Chief in Keef by Chief Keef, but instead of ending the line with the lyric, "Change your ass like seasons be," D Rose would write, "Papa G on Vernon Street," the exact street where Venzel had been killed less than a week before. And to make matters worse, the police would work out that the pistol used in this murder was also the very same one used to kill Javon Boyd a few weeks later, placing the blame firmly on 600. But an arrest wouldn't come immediately, and for the time being, D Rose would continue living the good life, hanging out with his famous rapper friends like Fredo, Rondo, C-Day, E-Day, Boss Top, and Tado from Glow Gang, and his now increasingly famous gang member friends like T-Roy, King Von, and Doo-Wop from No Limit. And in the month that followed, D Rose would still seemingly be sliding in the streets, hunting down his enemies, eventually catching one of the most prominent enemies of 600, an infamous rapper who had been dissing 600 and their allies extensively.
Oh, he did catch Lil Mark.
Lil Mark was a well-respected and popular member of the 051 Young Money Gang. He had been releasing drill music since 2011.
Yeah, I know about this. Well, allegedly. I don't know if he did or not, but I do know about Lil Mark. He made the No Competition, you know what I'm saying?
His famous track Zico World, a tribute to the fallen 051 member who 600 members would often diss. On the 24th of March 2014, Lil Mark released his latest diss song, No Competition. This track made Mark a prime target to 600, Lamron, O-Block, and other BD affiliates who were dissed in this song. The song title was a direct shot at Lil Durk and his OTF collective, as he had previously released a song titled Competition, and Lil Mark's remix would even make his intentions to diss Lil Durk and his OTF crew clear in the title. The lyrics for No Competition included numerous disrespected disses towards 600 and other enemies of 051 Young Money. Over a minute of the song's runtime is exclusively dedicated to dissing specific people by name, and in the opening verse, 600 is dissed 5 times with their dead members being disrespected, as well as OD Perry from Wick City, whose death led to the gang infamously renaming themselves O-Block, as well as a beloved girl named Keita from the Parkway Gardens who also died in 2009. The song clearly achieved what it set out to do, as just 3 days later on the 28th of March, 051 Young Money's enemies were out and looking for Lil Mark. At around 1:30 p.m. on the 300 block of East 51st Street in the city's Bronzeville neighborhood, 051 Lil Mark was waiting at a bus stop when a minivan would drive past, spotting him with one of the passengers raising a handgun with an extended clip and opening fire. Lil Mark would be shot in the head and he would die at the scene, and the shooter, reportedly wearing a mask, was unable to be identified. However, other assisting officers reported that the gunman's vehicle, a silver minivan with a Florida license plate, fled north and then went west. That minivan was later found in flames around 6:30 p.m. in the 3700 block of South Ellis Avenue. The murder took place right in front of a police observation device camera, and graphic photos of the murder scene were later shared to social media. Enemies of Lil Mark were ecstatic at the news of his death, and seemingly they had no regard to incriminating themselves soon after the crime. A video would be posted to social media very soon after the incident, which seemingly showed King Von, T-Roy, and D Rose driving back past the scene of the murder, filming the aftermath and saying, "Man down."
Hey, so took off 51st.
Damn, body down.
I was not gonna see you on the bro.
I'm not.
Tweaking, bro.
Body down. 51st. Gang.
Man down.
In fact, the target of the original diss song No Competition, Lil Durk, would even visit the very bus stop where the murder took place, calling it a very famous place.
Bus stop, man. Hey, this bus stop right here, though. This a real famous place. Yeah, this is a real famous place, big. Hey, this bus stop is a real famous place, big. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know what I'm saying?
The thing is why would you make a diss song? Why would you make a diss song, right? Make a diss song, and then you're waiting at a bus stop, knowing they wanna kill you, bro. I don't get it. Knowing they wanna kill you. You're in a diss song, 3 days later you died at the bus stop. I just don't understand, bro. RPM, bro.
Although no one was convicted of the murder, it's widely
bro,
speculated that 600, and specifically D Rose, may well have been involved in the killing, while being accompanied by King Von and T-Roy from O-Block. The same night after the murder, D Rose was posting to Twitter claiming that he was smoking on Lil Mark, followed by the tweet, "I'm going in, no problem, ain't gotta ask who shot him," the next morning. Those were lyrics from a March 16th, 2014 release from Prince Dre from O-Block, featuring 600's own E-Day. King Von, on the other hand, had tweeted throughout the night and day of the 28th all about the murder, something he had a habit of doing at the time. Right after midnight, Von would even tweet that D Rose was back in town, to which D Rose would respond a few hours later that the police hate to see him out sliding with Von and T-Roy, showing that they were clearly up to no good that day and very likely bragging about having something to do with the crime. Then, just a few hours after the murder of Lil Mark, Von begun tweeting, going on a crazy tirade, dissing Lil Mark and 051, starting by saying "Die Y" with a bunch of laughing emojis, as well as taunting them for Mark's death and telling them to keep their head up. And then, in a truly sad display of how childhood friends had turned into mortal enemies, EBK Juice, who was King Von's friend from his original Hood Kill Award, would tweet what seemed to be a genuine tribute to Lil Mark. This reflected the past when Juice, Mark, and Von had all seemingly been close enough to spend time together, but now Von would simply reply to the tweet by acting surprised, together with a bunch of laughing emojis, showing that Von was truly over the moon by the fact that a once childhood school friend was now dead and he might have had something to do with it. This ruthless attitude would become even clearer from his next tweet, where he would say that he truly lived for the gang life and killing. A girl would then ask Von where he was, to which Von replied he was still in traffic listening to the song Zico Pack with D Rose, which disses a dead 051 member. 8 minutes later, an O-Block member would ask Von if he was coming to Parkway that night, to which Von would reply, "Of course," because they had to celebrate. And a few hours later, he was back home, seemingly noting that the mission had been completed. Like many murders in the Chicago gang wars, D Rose could not stop himself from taunting 051 Young Money after Lil Mark's murder, even at the cost of revealing incriminating evidence that could have easily helped a murder investigation against him. As mentioned in the earlier article, a witness had spotted the gunman holding an extended magazine on his pistol, something that D Rose was now flexing on Instagram just 2 days after the murder, even writing.
That's what just showed me about it. It's crazy. Yo, they're all homies, all friends. Gang shit boom, now they're enemies.
The image caption that it's an
Crazy.
extension, so the clip's sticking out. That same day, he would also tweet that he was not a real rapper, but a gravedigger. And a day after that, he would post a video in which he states that he's tired of smoking on Tuka, so this here is Lil Mark.
I'm tired of smoking Tuka, so, you know, this one I'm finna be smoking at. It's called Lil Mark.
Eerily, 2 months before his death, Lil Mark would tweet at D-Rose, letting him know they were enemies. Clearly black disciples from numerous gang sets like 600, O-Block, and Lamron were delighted that the most famous rapper from 051 had now been killed. And during this time, the streets of Chicago would be incredibly active, as only a day after Lil Mark's murder, another one of 600's most hated rivals, the man who allegedly killed Jizzle, would end up losing his life too. On the 29th of March 2014, a prominent STL EBT member by the name of Lil B was being chased by the police in the 6200 block of South Rhodes Avenue. Police would claim Lil B, real name Rason Shaw, pointed a gun at them, prompting the officer to open fire, killing Lil B. And a harrowing video of the aftermath of the killing would circulate online following the incident. Later, local news would show the aftermath of the shooting, with angry crowds gathering who saw this as another example of the police using excessive force against a young black man.
A deadly shootout in the middle of a Chicago street. In the middle of the morning, a suspect allegedly pulls a gun on police who fired fatal shots. Police say they were chasing a suspected drug dealer.
A massive police presence between Eberhard and Rhodes on 63rd. Patrol cars, blue lights flashing after a police-involved shooting. Friends say 19-year-old Rasan Shaw had just left them to get something to eat.
He was running through the alley with no gun or nothing, because he just left us, so we know he ain't had no gun. The police shot him unjustified. Too many times in his back. He ain't do nothing, man.
Chicago Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 7 spokesperson.
Hey, you never know. Sometimes cops do it, bro. Be honest. Sometimes when cops don't like you and they want to say to come on, we know cops been lying. We know cops be lying and shit. Come on. Come on, bro. Come on now. We know this shit, bro. We know this shit. Come on now.
And Pat Camden says Shaw was caught by police in the middle of a drug deal. They went after him. Camden says Shaw pointed a gun at police.
The officer defends himself, shoots the offender. We did recover a .40 caliber Glock with an extended clip.
Chaos erupts after the shooting. An angry mob gathers.
The rumor starts to spread that he didn't have a gun, the police shot him for no reason. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you're carrying a gun and you're stopped by the police, put your hands up in the air, and I guarantee you won't get shot. Point a gun at a policeman, and I guarantee you will get shot.
And that's what happened in this case.
Absolutely.
After his death, allies of Lil B would share memories, many describing how he had been a menace and even killed numerous ops. However, D Rose from 600 would post several videos mocking Lil B to social media shortly after his death. On April the 1st, he would post a video dissing both Lil Mark and Lil B, as well as several other dead people, even after claiming he had just prayed.
I just got done prayer, but it's still Lil Mark, Lil B.
On April the 3rd, he would post himself in traffic while again dissing Lil B. It's believed that D-Rose had a grudge against Lil B as he had been previously shot by him, but D-Rose was committed to living the gang life, and his favorite activity would become driving around with other members looking for the ops, whilst listening to the man that had given him the increasingly large follower base that he now had, Chief Keef. On April the 12th, D-Rose would post a video of himself walking on the block with other members, saying that they were on their way to get these pills and do these drills.
Stress gang out here.
Gang. Tag me and break gang.
Stress gang.
Look, you got white folks on the block. We finna go get these pills and do these drills.
3 days later, he would once again post a video dissing Lil B, calling him Lil, and also dissing KI, the female STL member who had allegedly been killed by King Von from O-Block just a few days before this.
That's crazy.
Hey, Lil B. No, for move that, folks. We getting off a lot of Kyra. Lil B. You want to talk stuff about that dead person? I'm finna put the camera on you.
On April the 27th, D-Rose would post a video of himself hanging in the Parkway Gardens, aka O-Block, with O-Block members like Big A once again dissing Lil B and KI.
Oh, hello. Stress gang. Kyra.
And later that day, he would post another video telling that somebody had shot him and others in the legs, together with the caption, "Ain't on piss," showing that he wasn't even scared of getting shot.
Still out here, man, these bitches just shooting on my leg, man. It ain't shit, man. We still up on this L block. Late night, me and Maintain. You know, they was just shooting at our legs of King David. You know.
Unfortunately for D Rose, however, while he was seemingly celebrating the deaths of numerous ops that he had hated, whilst himself clearly feeling invincible, his days were in fact numbered. And very shortly after this, the authorities would ultimately catch up with him and take him off the streets for good.
I done got D Rose, man. I done got D Rose, y'all. Damn. I done got D Rose now, y'all.
On Monday, April the 28th, everything would come crashing down as the news reported that D Rose had been arrested and charged with the murder of Venzel, with D Rose being held on $1 million bail, and news articles even mentioning D Rose's affiliation with 600 and famous shrill rappers like Chief Keef. Shockingly, despite the famous and rich friends that D Rose supposedly now have, particularly Chief Keef and Fredo Santana, nobody would come to bail him out, because this would have likely required a 10% payment of the $1 million bail, meaning in this case $100,000, with $10K of that being completely non-refundable. Perhaps nobody felt like bailing out Chicago's biggest savage was a great investment of money, and so D Rose would begin a long wait for his trial behind bars, with members of 600 and his other friends settling for tweeting about wanting him free and claiming his innocence, rather than actually bailing him out. The trial of D Rose would eventually take place in late 2016. Later court documents provide a picture of a
15. I won this. Niggas know this nigga is not innocent. Come on, bro. We know he's not. Come on now.
rather messy trial where the kids who had been with Venzel that tragic night were now witnesses. And while at the time of the murder, they had still been rather young like Venzel himself, in the years that followed, they had since grown up, many of them seemingly becoming more active in the gang lifestyle themselves, such as Daryl Johnson, who was known as D-Money from Taekwon World, and Jaron George, who was known as Mook from Taekwon World. Both D-Money and Mook seemingly originally indicated D Rose as the shooter, but during the trial, they would deny any identification, as it seems that the no-snitching policy had since become a guiding rule in their lives as the years had gone on and they had gotten deeper into the streets following the murder. However, others like D-Money's older brother would testify that D Rose was indeed the shooter even during the trial, and in the end, D Rose was indeed found guilty, being sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of Venzel. Around the same time, D-Money would tweet from his personal account, repeating his stance from the trial that D Rose didn't actually kill Venzel. Perhaps this really was the case, and D-Money hadn't actually seen D Rose at the scene like he originally told police in 2014. Or perhaps he was simply fully committed to his new stance of no snitching, instead wanting to face D Rose in the streets and get personal vengeance. Because D-Money would then grow up to become a feared member of Taekwon World and an alleged killer himself. At one point, he would even allegedly be captured on O-Block security cameras with his friends, creeping and scoping for a victim, eventually killing a man who ended up not even being from O-Block. He would even allegedly film himself on Instagram Live only moments before the murder, and would then beg a YouTuber who had recorded the live to delete it off of their channel. Unfortunately, as usually comes with that life, D-Money would eventually meet the same fate, as he was killed in 2021 on his home turf of Woodlawn. And after D-Money's death, another Taekwon World member called 2 Times would post a tribute to D-Money, implying that D-Money had killed a total of 3 people. D Rose, on the other hand, would appeal his conviction, but this wouldn't help either. In 2019, the appellate court would affirm his sentence. But still, there's plenty of people who have spoken out about D Rose apparently being innocent, including his old co-defendant, Juice the Savage. Also,
a lot of people said that D Rose didn't even commit the crime that he committed. Police just put it on him. Sometimes police will do that. Sometimes if they can solve a case, they'll just put it on you just because they know you have previous cases. They just put it on you with no type of evidence. If they're saying that he probably is innocent, but I'm saying because there's some people in jail right now or in prison that is innocent for crimes they have not committed.
YouTuber Trenches News, who used to be close with many sets around Washington Park and the Woodlawn neighborhoods, as well as the members of 600 like Tay and 600 Breezy, who following the appeal loss would post on his Instagram calling D Rose an innocent man. There's also been many attempts to fundraise and raise awareness for his case or another appeal, but these have ultimately gone nowhere. Still, the alternative theories amongst drill fans list numerous other suspects, with one theory circulating online suggesting that Lil Boo from 600 was responsible. This theory is supported by the fact that 600 Breezy would claim in a DJ Vlad interview that the person who shot Venzel was a 600 member who is in fact now dead.
And then you can tell them a lot, like if you heard of D Rose is locked up right now for a murder that he didn't even commit. He wasn't even around just off his name. They found him guilty because people are going to court saying he did. But truth is, one of our homies that got killed did. D Rose didn't do it. But I can't go, we don't know how to go about that. Like, that's still, even though he gone, it's still like snitching. Like, You know, but still, like, they ain't gonna try to believe that D Rose.
So if D Rose came to you and said, listen, I need you to come in and testify and say that this dude
just saying fuck Vlad, fuck DJ Vlad, fuck that nigga, man,
who's now dead did the crime that I'm in jail for life for, so I could go home.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it because I wasn't there.
Okay.
I'm not putting
So
myself
also
in
someone who would have to be there.
And as we'll soon discuss, Lil Boo would unfortunately end up losing his life about a year after the murder of Venzel. This theory would also explain a tweet from Mook after the death of Lil Boo, where he disses him while saying RIP Venzel. There are even theories that the shooter wasn't a member of 600, with one theory suggesting that Front Street member Lil Los may have actually been the shooter. This has been supported by Taekwon World members commonly tweeting Front Street K or 061K, which is the main street that Front Street claim, as well as Savage Squad K, which is another Front Street affiliated set named after the record label of Front Street's most famous rapper, Fredo Santana. Venzel's close friend TB, or Terry Barry from Taekwon World, has even claimed that he believes D Rose is innocent too, while seemingly implying that the real culprit was from Front Street, even claiming that Capo from Front Street was shot as Get Back. This is particularly interesting given that TB has often been considered the one who actually killed Capo. However, overall, the tweets from Taekwon World members would suggest that the killer was in fact from 600, with 051 Driller even tweeting that he was smoking on Big V and even shouting out 600 despite both sets beefing with 600 due to the war between Taekwon World and 051. However, perhaps the most interesting theory is based on the facts known about this case that came out in the trial, as there's one particular fact that has many people convinced about who the shooter was, and that's the description about the clothing that the shooter was supposedly wearing. With this description coming from D Money, who had immediately following the shooting described to the detectives that the shooter was wearing a white cap, white shirt, and red pants. This is interesting because at the time there was a member of 600 who would commonly wear red pants, and that person had also been in the supposed murder vehicle just a night before Venzel was killed. That person wasn't D Rose, but instead C-Day, who had practically made wearing red pants his trademark at the time. Of course, this alone doesn't prove anything, but this detail has led to many people to believe that D Rose was in fact innocent of the most high-profile murder that was ultimately pinned on him, getting him 40 years. However, the prosecutor would in fact make one of their key arguments in the trial the fact that the witness not only knew D Rose from social media, but they also knew the other two people who had been seen in the alleged murder vehicle the night before, C-Day and Rondo, and thus they would have recognized if one of them had been the shooter instead. Nevertheless, if you believe D Rose was not responsible, it would seem that the Chicago police are still aware of D Rose's reputation as an infamous killer, and were looking to do anything they could to get him off the streets. King Von would actually refer to this in his song What It's Like, where he would rap in a verse that he was in the jail cell with D Rose when he received his sentence, and Von ends the song with a chilling outro where he
sometimes, especially if a person like D Rose, and maybe he didn't do it. I personally think he didn't do it. They're just trying to get him off the street just because, I mean, they want to. They got Sheeta locked up. They got D Rose. And they got Rondo. But Rondo said everybody knows that they did that hit. That nigga was not. They just killed him because he was from, you know what I'm saying, where he said he was from.
claims that the same detective that locked up Rondo, C-Day, and D Rose
on the lost L.A. Capone. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
bragged to Von about locking up his friends and told him he intended to do the same thing to him when he was facing the murder charge of Malcolm Stuckey, a charge that Von ultimately ended up beating, coming back at the end of 2017. Von claimed that that detective had told him that locking up him and his friends was like a game to them, but interestingly, Chicago police are refusing to release any reports concerning the murder of Venzel beyond the original incident report, claiming that the investigation is still ongoing or that the reports are still incomplete. For those believing in theories about foul play on behalf of the CPD, this certainly raises more questions. But let's not forget that for these gang members, killing their enemies or even innocent people just for where they're from is also a game. And ultimately, whether or not you agree with everything the police do in Chicago, the fact is, taking someone like D Rose off the street is being done for the safety of the public. And perhaps had he not become famous the world over for being a shooter and killer, then perhaps the police might not have worked so hard to lock him up by any means. On the other hand, Tay600 would reminisce on Twitter, saying that D Rose had basically grown up in the prison system since he was just a young teenager. This combined with the fact that he would become known amongst drill fans as a cold-hearted killer at such a young age, due to rappers like Chief Keef hyping him up, then it's understandable to see why his life would take the unfortunate trajectory that it did. Ultimately, once again, another 600 member had been taken off the streets, losing their future to the gang war that made them famous. But going forward, even with prominent members off the streets, either dead or in jail on both sides, as the year went on, the remaining members would continue to wage war in those streets. And, in music, as songs would go viral, detailing the losses on both sides of the war.
That's just sad, bro. Both sides. either in jail or they dead. If they're in jail, what have you accomplished? Niggas in the game do not give a fuck about you. Be honest, you catching bodies, niggas not gonna call you on the phone. Niggas not gonna come up, bro. That's why I don't get why niggas do this shit. Niggas do not give a fuck. You 40 years, niggas do not give a fuck. Let's be honest now, bro. Let's be honest now, bro. And once they said that, he realized, come on, they don't really give a fuck about you. Let's be honest. Once you go up locked up, they don't give a fuck about you. That's the thing. Like the truth. They're not really your homies. Just a bunch of niggas repping that, you know what I'm saying? Come on now.
War, with twisted lyrics claiming to be keeping score of the tragedies, and in the process giving the whole world an insight into exactly what was going on in 600's hood. "2014 had been a turbulent year for 600 members. 3 of their most infamous members, D Rose, Rondo No. 9, and C-Day, would all be taken off the streets for good after being implicated in high-profile murder cases. And with the murder of their star rapper L.A. Capone in 2013, it would seem that the gang lifestyle was truly catching up to them. But despite these losses, the remaining members would continue to carry the flag for their set musically. On the 4th of June 2014, 600 member 600 Breezy drops his track Don't Get Smoked. This track would be a gangbanging anthem for 600 members. The music video would show Breezy and other 600 members on their block toting serious firearms, including the infamous 600 Mac. The track's lyrics are pointed disses at all of 600's numerous ops, including rapper TTB Nez and his TTB or Train to Blow set from the low end, also known as Suwoo, which have strong ties with their mortal enemies 051 Young Money, as well as 051 themselves, more specifically the fallen member Fathead, who was killed at only 14 years old in 2012. Breezy would also diss Brick Squad and their fallen member Lil Jojo, who was killed at only 18 in 2012, with 600, particularly D Rose, having allegedly been involved, together with numerous other people, as well as rapper Lil J from STL, who had made a name for himself since 2012 by heavily dissing Chief Keef, O-Block, and all of their affiliates, and who at that point had already miraculously survived getting shot 9 times, and would not long after the release of this song end up getting shot 6 more times, earning him the bizarre nickname from DJ Academics, the Chirac Wolverine.
Damn, nigga was shot 9 times and then shot 6 times and still... Damn,
as well as P5, aka
crazy.
Crack from Jaro City, who was allegedly killed by King Von from O-Block in 2012, along with a number of other people who may well have been affiliated with 600. In the song's outro, 600 Breezy continues the dissing by mentioning numerous dead members from rival gangs, including Tuka, real name Shondale Gregory from STL, and Tutu from Jaro City, both killed in the war that had been waged between the different sets around the Washington Park and Woodlawn neighborhoods during the 2010s. Don't Get Smoked also featured a famous lyric that supposedly mentioned the score between 600 and their ops, putting it at 6-24. This became a famous lyric that had been repeated and remixed by many other Black Disciple rappers like King Von and Lil Durk. The lyric itself would spark intense debate and speculation as to whether this quoted score of 6-24 in favor of 600 was indeed an accurate depiction of the actual score in the ongoing gang war between 600 and their enemies. Now, I'm certainly not condoning the use of any kind of scoreboards when it comes to gang wars, and this video is far from any kind of scoreboard video, but
Damn. Oh, that's when it meant it was 6-24? What? 2, 3, 4, 5, 17, 18, 19. What? This don't count right here. This Jabron boy does not count. He does not count. He wasn't even in no gang or nothing. That's crazy. What? We sitting here killing our own people. Oh my gosh, bro.
arguably, when you look at the people involved, this score could well be accurate, as at this point, there were indeed 6 people on 600's side who had unfortunately lost their life to the gang wars so far. However, as far as 24 of their enemies being killed, this was much more difficult to prove, but it could well add up if you're considering members from the many other gangs that 600 were beefing with. Now, for the record, this would be an unfair way of keeping score, as essentially it omits anybody that's passed away on the O-Block side of the war, but includes basically anybody that 600 has had a beef with. Meanwhile, others have theorized whether the number numbers 6 to 24 wasn't actually the real score, but in fact a coded diss aimed towards 600's ops in Taekwon World. This is because Taekwon Tyler, who Taekwon World is named after, actually died on June the 24th, 2012, or 624. And many ops of 600 from Taekwon World have publicly stated how much they hate this combination of numbers in a day. Or, perhaps more likely, 6 to 24 may well even be an elaborate play on words, or in this case numbers, to represent the letters B and D in the alphabet, with 6 representing the 6 of 600 and 2-4 representing the B and the D standing for Black Disciples. And this is actually what 600 Breezy himself says in the very next line of the song, where he raps how all of his friends are 2-4. Regardless of the exact explanation, these bold lyrics would put 600 Breezy on the map as the next big rapper to look out for from 600. But meanwhile, in the streets, things would unfortunately keep heating up, and only days after this song released, another high-profile murder would unfortunately take place. MOB member Scrap, real name Brian Weekly, was seemingly responsible for the murder of beloved 600 member Lil Steve that had caused 600 members to rename their hood Steve Drive in his honor. Although Scrap was a feared shooter by himself and known for allegedly killing Lil Steve, Scrap's family also had deep ties within the MOB gang. Scrap was the younger brother of Ruger, who was the biggest rapper to come out of MOB, well, at least until Lil Mo from the younger generation begun making a name for himself. But Scrap would also try his own hand in music, making several songs and music videos over the years, often collaborating with his brother Ruger and even his cousin, FBG Duck, as well as his close friends Buki and Dusky the Man. They would even have Lil Jojo, who made the controversial track BDK before his death in 2012, appearing in their biggest song, Ain't Nothing Bigger, which is an anthem dedicated to their street set MOB. And in his verse, Scrap would diss both D-Thang and Lil Steve. Besides the obvious diss towards D-Thang, aka Devon, these lyrics once again reference how Lil Steve had supposedly tried to kill Scrap, which is why Scrap allegedly ended up killing him first, as he would imply several times on Twitter. This was a sad turn of events because, as mentioned before, years prior, many 600 members were even very close with Scrap. Take Capone would actually explain that Scrap went to the same school as McAdoo from 600, and he would bring him around other members playing basketball. And as Scrap and Ruger's father, Big Les, would later claim in an interview, the war with 600 ultimately began with his youngest son, Scrap. Big Les would explain how McAdoo had stayed in Scrap's house multiple times, and Scrap would stand up for Mac in their school when anyone would try and beef with him.
Bad about him, because to be honest with you, I love Machiavelli, and I love him like a son. And for me seeing and knowing what happened between him and my son, I know what happened. Machiavelli stayed at my house. Machiavelli slept at my crib. I took Machiavelli to play ball with my sons. Machiavelli was with me, under me, with my son Scrap. You know what I'm saying? So Machiavelli was just on this side, Scrap was over here. But they still used to be together every day, you know what I'm saying? And the streets, like I said, the streets divided them.
As the beef between MOB and 600 got more serious,
I told you the streets be dividing people that used to be your homies, bro. I told you the streets be doing that. Streets be sitting divided and people used to be cool with. And so you're from that side, you gotta be fuck with you know what I'm saying? Unless you flip, but
so too did the relationship between McAdoo and Scrap. And eventually, Scrap would even publicly tweet that he wanted to kill McAdoo and Tay 600 just like Baldy. One of his friends around this time, Rico Reckless, would later appear on No Jumper, where he would discuss just how bloodthirsty Scrap was in the streets around this time.
I knew Scrap was a real savage one time, but one time I picked Scrap up. I picked Scrap, Bebe, Stain, I think like Freaky or something. I just had like an old Lincoln. Now that's all of us have been my Lincoln, but it's like the old school Lincoln that fill up with, and we put hella guns in them. One time, Scrap get in the car. We only been in the car for like 2 minutes. I swear to God, he in the car. Damn, I'm ready to kill. I said, oh, hey, we dropping his ass back home. This is bad.
Scrap was seemingly a loose cannon, and at times it could be hard to tell whether he was joking or serious. There's one famous clip from the many vlogs that MOB.
I mean, he could be joking and nigga could be serious at the same time. Half and half. Hey.
B shot around this time, where Scrap shoots at a head with what appears to be a BB gun. But seriously, in the streets of Chicago, running up on someone like this could be very deadly. And sadly, Scrap's savage reputation may have ultimately caught up with him in the end. Something which, strangely, Scrap himself may well have anticipated, as his brother would later say in one interview.
But I told him before he left out of the door, I'm like, bro, you gotta calm down, bro. Ain't in this store for what you doing, but life, but definitely in jail. And I told him that, promise you, before he walked out the door. He looked at me in my eyes, he said, I know I'm gonna die anyway, I see it coming. I promise you. Said the exact words the day he left out of the house and he died, literally.
As Ruger has also mentioned, Scrap had actually been shot not
once. Oh, did y'all hear what he just said?
He looked at me in my eyes, he said, I know I'm gonna die anyway, I see it coming, I promise you. Said his exact words the day he left out of the house and he died, literally.
That's crazy.
As Ruger has also mentioned, Scrap had actually been shot.
It just seems like he knew he. It just seems like he said, I'm gonna die anyways. It just seems like he knew that was gonna
once,
happen.
But twice in the 2 weeks leading up to his death.
My brother got shot 2 different occasions before he just died. Before he died in 2014, and within 2 weeks. So 3 occasions. The third one was the one he died. I promise you, within 2 weeks. The first one he got hit in his leg, in his thigh, over some goofy. But he got shot. You feel me? And it went in and out. It kind of healed up a little bit, a little fast. He was walking. Then he got hit in his chest. A week, like 4, 5, 6 days later, in his chest, came out his arm, went straight in and out. It kind of healed up a little fast. He felt like he can go right back out. He kept going back out there in them streets, bro.
After the second shooting, he even proudly posed for a picture, brandishing his rifle and showing off his wounds. Scrap was seemingly not scared of getting shot or killed, and he felt the desire to remain in the streets until the bitter end. On the 7th of June, Scrap was out on the 5600 block of South Warbush Avenue in the early hours of the morning. He was with a 20-year-old man in an alleyway when a black Dodge Charger with all tinted windows would pull up. A towel was apparently used to cover the vehicle's license plate, and the shooters were seemingly planning to catch their target and get away as quickly as possible. Both Scrap and his friend were sprayed with bullets and hit multiple times before that car fled the scene, and Scrap would reportedly die at the scene whilst his friend would be taken to Stroger Hospital in critical condition. Just 3 years after the murder of Lil Steve, Scrap had been gunned down less than 1 mile away from where Steve's life was taken. And although his killer has never been caught, many people on the internet have argued that members of 600 were behind the hit, with Just Blow being mentioned as one of the potential shooters. Later the same morning of Scrap's murder, Just Blow would tweet that he was smoking.
They're pretty much saying, leave no witnesses. That's what it sounds like, leave no witnesses, bro, for real.
On Scrap, to which someone would reply, laughing, how he should at least wait a bit before dissing somebody who had just been killed a few hours before. He would also allegedly post a video of himself being on 600's hood near the site of Scrap's murder scene on the night leading up to his death.
On the block all night.
It's even believed that Just Blow, formerly Justo, took on this new nickname shortly after the killing of Scrap. However, one alternative rumor would circulate, suggesting that the killer was actually another 600 member, Lil Boo. According to this theory, the killer couldn't be Just Blow, as Tay Capone would later openly claim in Instagram comments that Just Blow had actually never killed anyone from MOB. Tay Capone seemingly knew what had happened, and months after the death of Scrap, he would tweet taunting MOB and claiming that nobody had been killed in retaliation after Scrap's murder, and implying 600 were responsible. Tay would also explain in a Cam Capone interview that ultimately Scrap had done something that had 600 on his ass forever, likely the murder of Lil Steve.
Say for instance, like before he ended up doing what he doing, if a motherfucker like would have caught Scrap, he probably would have, depending on who it is, he probably would have given him a pass, like, I knew you before this shit. You feel what I'm saying? But it's on with your homies, you feel me? But Scrap ended up doing some that had 600 on his ass forever, you know what I'm saying? And it was just it was up after that, and he ended up getting whacked. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, the streets caught up with him, because they had to it with a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? So he ended up becoming one of them victims of the streets. But it's like, before all that, it's like he was gonna be a victim to somebody, but it was just like, it's probably that knew him before this probably would have been like, you know.
However, it's also largely disputed that 600 could have even killed Scrap, and many have suggested an alternative theory that an unrelated gang called Sheep.
Look at this shit, bro. Look how many gangs are in the area. Look at this shit, dog. Look at this shit. Like, what the fuck?
Shields may well have been responsible. Shields is a gangster disciple and Mickey Cobra gang set from around 57th and Shields in the Inglewood neighborhood, which is right on the other side of the Dan Ryan Expressway that goes through the south side, only a few blocks away from MOB's hood. Now, relatively little is known about this set other than the fact that they have a long-lasting war with MOB, as well as 600's ally, Lamron, which is also located in Inglewood. Now, many people believe that Shields were responsible for Scrap's death due to the fact that MOB members would post GDK for Scrap around the time of the killing. Moreover, Shields rapper Khalifa Waymo would dedicate a diss track to MOB, and particularly their top rappers Ruger and Lil Mo, where he would rap, "The funniest thing I ever saw was Scrap begging for his life," implying that he was present when Scrap was killed. Shields member Loney B would also chime in, claiming that Shields was responsible in YouTube comments supposedly from his personal account, where he would reply to a comment querying why Shields claimed Scrap's murder when they thought 600 were responsible, with him commenting, "Lol, stop it, we caught Scrap in Dat Alley." After literally admitting that it was his gang who committed the murder, he would then go on to accuse the other commenter of sounding like the police with their questions. Now, one commenter would ask why people thought that 600 were responsible, to which he would reply that it's only because 600 were MOB's biggest ops. Now, this would be the same account where he would post the song "Scrap From My Plug," another diss song that's obviously all about smoking on Scrap. Another rapper from Shields, Michi, would also rap about the murder of Scrap in his song "Ain't For None," by rapping how Scrap got caught up in that alley and he ain't make it back. The music video for this was then removed from YouTube before it was re-uploaded years later. But as nobody has been officially charged or convicted for this murder, we might never know for sure who was responsible. There's been many misleading social media posts from Scrap's family regarding the murder, such as Scrap's blood brother commenting on Facebook claiming that 600 were responsible for shooting his brother after posting that Rondo number 9 is lucky he's in jail. On the other hand, Scrap's father would post to his Facebook story in 2018 dissing Shields, making many think that that must be related to the murder. After Scrap's death, some members of MOB would begin referring to themselves as Scrap Gang in his honor, and due to the notoriety that Scrap's name carried in the streets, Scrap Gang would eventually become a name that many of the young members would rep exclusively, in a similar way to how O-Block eventually begun to replace the earlier name for Wick City that was mainly used for members of the Black Disciples from Parkway Gardens, but with both names essentially meaning the same thing.
Alright, I get a lot of stuff on the internet about MOB and Scrap Gang. What's the difference between the two?
It's no difference.
No difference at all?
It's all the same.
All the same? Okay. Same area and everything?
Same area, same everything. It's just more so it was a younger person that died, you know what I'm saying? So the younger people had a different feel for Scrap, and it was like a Scrap Gang, like, you know, just like everybody else do.
However, some older members of MOB seemingly don't share the same view, suggesting that only the real
So that's like kind of like 600 in Brick City, but Brick City niggas don't really beef with, you know what I'm saying, with 600 though.
members go by MOB only. Despite Scrap's name staying alive even amongst the younger members like Lil Mo, who were still just kids when he was killed, the sad reality was that once again, another person had lost their life to this ever-escalating gang war, and unfortunately, things were far from over. And already, by the end of that same month, another local gang known for their bitter beef with 600 would end up losing one of their members to the streets too.
That's crazy.
051 Polo, real name Michael Patton, was a 17-year-old boy from the 051 neighborhood. He would also seemingly rep 051 Young Money the gang, although he was likely more of a hang-around member rather than somebody who was actively sliding with the gang looking to kill ops. Sadly, Polo himself would end up being caught up in the feud between 051 and their enemies, with tragic consequences. On the 30th of June 2014, Polo was walking with a 15-year-old friend around his neighborhood on the 600 block of East 50th Place. There, a black van pulled up alongside the pair before having a short conversation. Then, a passenger inside that van would open fire on the teens, hitting Polo in the chest and his 15-year-old friend in the right arm, and sadly, Polo would die at the scene. The aftermath of this horrific shooting was actually witnessed by a photojournalist called Vincent D. Johnson, who was actually watching the rainstorm that was going on outside of his apartment window when he saw a young man in distress calling for help. Upon approaching the scene, he would actually notice Polo was lying face up in a gutter and immediately called the emergency services. Surrounding Polo were two other teenagers, one of them appearing traumatized, pacing back and forth and recalling, "They shot my brother." But whilst waiting outside for the police to arrive, Johnson would unfortunately witness Polo take his last breaths, later describing these final moments in a moving article that he wrote for the Chicago Sun-Times. After the arrival of the police, Vincent then decided to go back inside his apartment to get his camera. He would return, capturing chilling images of Polo's body covered in a sheet, drenched in the rain, as detectives combed
17 and 15, dog. I know they're in the streets, but that is young. Y'all gotta realize that is young, bro. They're like, they didn't even graduate high school, nothing, bro. That's
the scene during the storm. These events are a stark reminder that members of these gangs could lose their lives anytime, any place. Whilst many of the neighborhoods, like much of Washington Park and Woodlawn, are overwhelmingly populated by some of the poorest inhabitants of Chicago, other neighborhoods nearby, such as 051's hood on the northeast corner of Washington Park, are actually slightly more gentrified. This means that you might have an established journalist living amongst some of the most notorious gangs in the city. Now, this is partly due to this area being slightly closer to downtown, along with ongoing gentrification of many of the hoods of Southside Chicago, but also due to the fact that the University of Chicago has its main campus covering a large portion of the neighborhood on the east side of Washington.
What? University of Chicago is there? Bro, what the what? What? This is gang infestation, you gotta...
Washington Park, called Hyde Park. Therefore, while the Washington Park neighborhood on the west side of the park is over 90% black with a median household income of $30K, Hyde Park on the east side is much more racially diverse, boasting a much higher median income, almost double that of the west side. Because of this specific location of 051's neighborhood, relatively close to both downtown and the University of Chicago campus, as well as the surrounding middle-class neighborhood of Hyde Park, fans of Chicago drill have even written long theories about how gentrification and demographic changes may well affect 051's ability to recruit new members in the future. But back to the story. Following the murder of Polo, 051 members would tweet their tributes to him, and rumors would circulate about who well may have been behind the murder, with some 600 members being prime suspects in these theories. However, one particular tweet from 051 Driller in 2015, questioning who else had been killed for Get Back for LA Capone besides an innocent cab driver, would make it seem as if Polo's death may well have been unrelated to 051's beef with 600. The following months would remain relatively quiet for 600, but unfortunately, at the end of 2014, the streets would once again become deadly, and another young man would lose his life. This time, the person would end up being somebody who had ties to both sides of the war. Lil Nick, or Nico, real name Nicholas Campbell, was a 15-year-old kid from the Washington Park neighborhood. More specifically, he lived around the 5800 block of King Drive, which is right next to the hoods of both MOB and 600. Growing up, Nick would also seemingly be close with both members of MOB and 600, and can be seen in photos with guys like E-Day, as well as with guys from MOB. In fact, in January 2014, Nick would post to Facebook explaining how he was going to beat up a guy called Derek, which would start a long back and forth between him and another boy named Trayvon. At one point during the back and forth, Trayvon would point out how Nick had previously been claiming to be 600 and MOBK, but had since switched sides and was now affiliated with MOB, to which Nick would reply saying that he'd been MOB forever. Nick was also seemingly close with members of STL and would make a tribute post to none other than KI after she was allegedly killed by King Von from O Block in April 2014. But then in May, Nick would once again post on his Facebook, this time tagging that he was with a member of 600, Young Famous, aka Hassan Moore. Once again, next month in June, after MOB Scrap had been killed, Nick would often post tributes to him, often saying how he was also scrap or die. But in November, Nick would make several cryptic posts. In the first one, he would say that people wanted to get at him because he messes with his own family. He would also end this post by saying that he's F57, F Travis, scrap or die. This was a reference to that other nearby set called Shields, who had rumored to have been the ones involved in the murder of Scrap. This would start a back and forth with a member of MOB who would question if Nick was now repping MOB, to which Nick would reply that he will always be scrap or die. This would make members of MOB threaten to catch Nick, to which Nick would respond by saying that he was going to smoke them. Nick would then make another post saying that the same people that he'd grown up with had switched sides on him, tagging 2 MOB members in the post. This would start another long back and forth where one of the MOB members would say how Nick used to be MOB crazy, but then flip back to 600 many times, and saying that this kind of talk would get Nick killed. To this, Nick would respond that he hadn't flipped, they just thought that he was 600, to which the MOB member would reply saying that Nick is 600. And then, about a month later in December, Nick would be out in the far southern suburb of Harvey, where he would be at a place that was once an illegal strip club that had ultimately been busted and shut down some months earlier. Allegedly, Nick was outside that location, but not just with anyone, but members of 600, particularly Just Blow. In the early morning hours of December the 7th, Nick would seemingly be caught off guard in the parking lot of that abandoned club. Someone would turn up, shooting Nick multiple times, and he would ultimately later pass away in hospital.
The thing is, I want to know, how the fuck do they know where they be at? It's a question. The nigga said South Suburb. How the fuck do they know where they be at? Is the question. How do they know where they be at? Is the question. How do they know where they be at. You know what I'm saying? How?
That very same day, one of the members of MOB, who had been fighting with Nick just a month earlier, would even post a tribute to him, saying that even though Nick had been messing with the ops, it was still RIP. And some of Nick's friends would even start their own set in honor of him, which they named Nico Gang, and their territory being the area around where Nick lived. Meanwhile, Nico Gang has actually kept a good relationship with 600, and in the years following Nick's death, members of 600 have even posted tributes to him. This relationship has been rumored to have formed due to the fact that Nico Gang actually has heavy beefs with MOB, with it ultimately being MOB who likely killed Nick. However, in 2016, one of the members of Nico Gang
but
replied
I thought Scrap Gang and MOB was the same thing. This shit is confusing.
actually it wasn't the ops that killed his homies. But whatever the case, later that year, 600 Breezy would post that Nick's killer had been killed while shouting out Nico Gang. Nick's story is a cautionary tale, and it just shows how attempting to be cool with both sides of a gang war is a fine line that very few people can survive. 2014 was a turbulent year for 600, with C-Day, Rondo, and D Rose being taken off the streets for good. More murders would also take place, with people on both sides losing friends, a stark reminder that in the gang wars, there can never really be any winners. But with new members getting more recognition in music, such as 600 Breezy making his debut, it would seem that there would finally be a potential way to escape the streets, and soon 600 Breezy would have a golden opportunity to escape the cycle of violence that took the lives of so many of his friends like LA and Rondo, who could have used music as a way out. However, in the end, that opportunity would end up being largely squandered, and starting in 2015, 600 would suffer more devastating losses in the streets, starting to be what many believe to be the downfall of 600. Back in the early days of Brick City, before 600 had formed as a Black Disciple gang set, some members like 600 Breezy and Lil Boo would actually consider themselves to be GDs or Gangster Disciples. And Lil Boo could even be seen in several throwback pictures throwing up the rakes, the pitchfork hand sign that signifies GD membership. The makeup of Brick City was really a result.
I heard that most of these people were GDs, but then they flipped to BD. I heard most of the people in this shit was all GDs, but then they flipped to BD.
Changes in the way that Chicago gangs were structured around this time, by groups of people from the neighborhood with various different gang ties, as a result of the demolition of the large public housing projects in Chicago, displacing many of the traditional gangs that had previously been grouped closely together in their respective housing projects. In Brick City's case, there were Black Disciples like the brothers E-Day and C-Day, as well as others who originally hailed from the building at 6217 South Calumet that was called the Randolph Towers, also known as the Castle or the Met Building. This was a 16-story project building that acted as a Black Disciple stronghold before the leaders of the gang were indicted, and the building was eventually demolished during the 2000s. Some of 600's members, like the 600 founder D-Thang and his brother M-Thang, were also Black Disciples who came from Parkway Gardens, known in future as O-Block, but at the time known as Wick City, while others, like D Rose, would actually have ties to the Black P Stones out of Motown. And S-Dot and 600 Breezy belonged to a set called Evans Mob around 79th and Evans Avenue, with S-Dot's family having a Black Disciple background and 600 Breezy's family having a heritage in the Gangster Disciples. However, 600's ties with the Black Disciple side of the gangs in the city would become stronger over time, as they formed new bonds with the nearby Black Disciple sets such as Front Street, O-Block, Blackgate, and Lamron. And while the rivalry between the GDs and the BDs would certainly make a comeback as each of these factions gained prominence in the Chicago drill scene, but despite Lil Boo's background as a Gangster Disciple, he's actually credited with being a founding member of 600 together with D-Thang, and therefore was one of the most loved and respected members despite his heritage in a supposedly rival crew. Tay600 would actually describe him as the godfather of 600, breaking down their relationship in videos on his YouTube channel.
Lil Boo is directly responsible for why I'm 600, so it was only right, you know, that I come and give y'all this story time on one of the fathers of the six. Lil Boo was, of course, he's an original. He's one of the originators.
Hey, one of the fathers, bro. God. This one of the founding fathers of the shit, damn.
Of 600, you know, him and D-Thang, they came together and they made this thing, you know what I'm saying? Him and D-Thang, they was best friends, you know, back in the day. They was right in between that age range where they was like E-Day and Trigger and Stello. They was like they age, but they wasn't they age. They was like old enough to be like Lil Bro and them and be around them, but they wasn't really like they age to do everything that they was doing at the time, you know what I'm saying? And they told me like that's what made them to basically coming and making their own block, because the they looked up to really ain't want to give them their own shine yet, and they got tired of, you know, sitting back in the cut you know, just being Lil Bro now. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to be something. They wanted to be the face of something, you know what I'm saying? That's how 600 came into play. And when that decision got made, Lil Boo and D-Thang, they put their heads together and they made the decision to jump off the porch and do 600 business. You know what I'm saying? Not continue under the Brick City Act or the Gunland Act or the Rockstar Act or the...
Members of 600 like Tay would claim that they were personally recruited and trained by Lil Boo, who actually showed them to ropes to gang lifestyle in the area, even making these young members so tough that even as teens, they would be able to hold their own against elders and have no fear of their rivals in the area.
I'm sitting in Booker room, Lil Boo sitting right there, he unjamming, he cleaning the pipe, dismantling it and all that. He looked over at me, he like, yeah, so Tay, you ready to get with it, boy? I'm looking at him like you feel me? Like that look I just did, I'm giving him that look, like, you feel me? I'm damn. Okay, cool. What that mean? Booker like, man, he asked me, is you ready to get down with this 600? You know, that was my ingratiation into like, all right, are you really 600 for? And one thing I really could say about Lil Boo for was when he put me in, he actually took that time. This is what a lot of that get on the streets now is missing. When he put me in, when he recruited me and he put me in.
That's kind of crazy to think about. People just come with a crew or people and then boom. You know what I'm saying? That's how it starts. It's crazy for real though.
He took the time to teach me, you know what I'm saying, certain, like how to move, how not to get killed out here, folks. Like Lil Boo was like, he wasn't gonna let me fail, folks. I ain't gonna lie, like, he took my hand and was like, no, you can't do this, little bro. You can't do that, little bro. You gotta walk like this, little bro. You gotta look this way and that way, little bro. You gotta hit this cut. You just can't be on the strip all the time, little bro. You gotta find you a back street. You gotta do this, you gotta do that.
However, one thing about Lil Boo that kind of confused the younger members of 600 would be his love life. Because despite teaching them how to move militant so that they could survive the gang war in the streets, Lil Boo himself was known to be in a risky and controversial relationship with a girl named Boobie, who actually came from the hood of one of 600's longest enemies, Jaro City, whose member Dome had in 2011 killed D-Thang, who was Lil Boo's best friend.
I get my crib, we gonna move far away from it. It's hot as
You like food?
I get my crib, we gonna move far away from it. R.I.P. No, me. Gay.
I'm sorry, you can't just not be in the gang and fuck with a girl that's from your ops hood. You just cannot do that. That's nah, bro.
I ain't got one good, but it's close. D-Thang is close. My sister got a deuce on the bar. D-Thang her good this little. I should ask for it, but I don't trust you.
This dog going Boobie. Now, let me make sure I tell y'all, if y'all don't know who the backstory on Boobie is. Boobie is a girl from Jaro City. She was killed in like 2015 or 16, I don't know, one of them years. But she was an op, and she was like, and this is no disrespect, but Boobie ass was popped. Boobie ass was popped. I ain't smoking on Boobie. I don't got nothing negative to say about her. I don't throw no extra unneeded shade. But Boobie ass was snap, crackle, popped. And folks used to be eating that and head over heels and kissing her, tonguing her down and pictures and all type of grabbing that ass and like getting told folks and them about her. I'm just like, ooh, on BD. I'm like, ooh, on BD, folks ass a freak on folk grave.
And to make
oh my gosh, damn.
That's even more confusing. Dome was allegedly Boobie's big brother. Lil Boo's relationship with Boobie was not only problematic because she came from a rival hood, but because she actively participated in gang life and street politics. And on her social media, she could be seen actively repping rival gangs to 600 like Jaro and 051, throwing up gang signs, including cracking the trays to diss the Black Disciples, as well as shouting out some of 600's biggest ops like LA Capone's killer Lil Mick from 051, as well as D-Thang's killer and her brother Dome, as well as being seen toting guns, seemingly ready to catch ops by herself. But moreover, she was also known as a so-called setup chick, a girl who would act like she was romantically interested in another gang member just to lure him into their ops clutches. Now, particularly because of this, Boobie was considered to have been an active participant in the gang war, and she had a target on her back. A target which could unfortunately pull Lil Boo into the crosshairs too. And despite Lil Boo himself now having an opportunity to use Boobie to catch his ops, he refused to take advantage of her, as the couple genuinely appeared to be in love.
You know, Boobie was a real lie. Like, Foden was calling her a setup queen. She was like a top op, like top female op. He was trying to kill her. He was out here looking for Boobie, folks. And we steady telling Lil Boo slow ass, like, folks, you want to be with her when looking for her, find her, folks? Then, well, that's looking for her when they find her, what you gonna do? You gonna smoke about Boobie? Bro, this man was dead ass, like, he loved her. He went backdooring Boobie. He wouldn't even try to get Boobie to backdoor none of the ops. That's how much he loved her. He just wanted her to love, they just wanted to love each other.
Being from rival gangs in an area that had turned into a full-blown war zone would naturally cause some tension in the relationship. Boobie would even tweet how she sometimes needed to sneak Lil Boo and other 600 members out of her hood due to 600's ops like FBG Duck, Dusky, and 051 Melly all wanting to kill them. Lil Boo's ops would also try and get to him by attempting to expose Boobie for cheating, and sometimes guys from Boobie's side of the war would even seemingly threaten her to stop seeing Lil Boo, or they would end up both getting killed. But throughout it all, although they were never seemingly exclusive with each other and their relationship would go through its ups and downs, they would continue to publicly display their love and even defend one another to their fellow gang members, essentially becoming a sort of Chicago version of Romeo and Juliet. But sadly, in 2015, this relationship would come to a tragic end, as both would end up losing their lives. On the morning of the 3rd of April,
Oh, nah. See, like, I get a different rival sets or rival neighborhoods, but they love each other, like, and then they weren't backdooring nobody, they weren't backdooring each other, they just loved it. See, that's the one thing is, love can get you killed. Well, what 50 Cent said with number 5, show no love. Love can get you killed. That's
Shortly before noon, Lil Boo was walking down South King Drive in 600's neighborhood when a gold-colored car reportedly drove up next to him. A man would then exit the vehicle, proceeding to shoot Lil Boo, real name Jerome Anderson, multiple times before getting back into the car and fleeing the scene. Lil Boo would be left for dead in the street, laying next to the back wheel of a parked car, with a viral image of his body laying next to the car's rear tire, leading to his enemies to refer to him with the disrespectful nickname Tire Head. Meanwhile, only about half an hour after Lil Boo had been killed, Boobie would post on her Twitter, seemingly upset that Lil Boo wasn't answering his phone, unaware that the love of her life was lying dead on the street, just about a half mile away from Jaro's hood. Following Lil Boo's death, his friends would post their tributes on social media, including his old friend Chief Keef, who had practically been a member of 600 himself. 600 Breezy would also post on social media, reminiscing about his fallen friend, and not so subtly hinting that the reason he was killed was because Lil Boo himself had killed so many of the ops. Later in 2016, Breezy would even claim that Lil Boo was
damn, y'all. Anyways, that's gonna really be it. Part 6, right? Hold on. Let me make sure it's part 6. Yes, part 6. Be back for part 7, y'all. Turn naps. I'm out.